Me to be here. I'd like to first thank my colleagues and friends at the Institute, Dr. Mehmet Karakuş and his wonderful team for organizing this evening. So let me tell you what I have planned to do. I'm going to spend the first 10 minutes or so thinking together, reflecting on what this activity we call music is. Why are we so enthralled by it? And then we will talk about how the West discovered Turkish music, moving from that on to how Western musical style entered the Ottoman court, and then we will end with a discussion of how the West and Turkish music came together during the Republic. This is a huge area, and it's going to be necessarily an overview. So, but as we move forward, I'm going to be playing a lot of musical examples. They will be short excerpts, but towards the end we will hear a couple of pieces in their entirety. So, without further ado, I think I can. In 1997, Canadian famous, well-known psychologist and linguist Steven Pinker, he wrote this book called How the Mind Works. And in it, he infamously, this became quite famous after he argued for this, he said music is simply auditory cheesecake. It just tickles our earbuds. And beyond that, it's still pleasant diversion, but it really is not essential. He actually said if it were to disappear from human life tomorrow, we wouldn't even notice. It wouldn't make any difference. As you can imagine, of course, the musicians were quite furious, but scientists saw in this an opportunity to provide as much evidence as possible to prove him wrong. And this was the beginning of an area called evolutionary musicology. And one of my colleagues at the University of Cambridge, Professor Ian Cross, has been a leading figure in this new discipline. And in response to Steven Pinker, he wrote this article called "Is Music the Most Important Thing We Ever Did?" And all accumulating evidence, scientific evidence, really suggests that it just might be one of the most important things that enabled our survival as a species. Archaeological evidence tells us that we have been around, the modern humans, so-called Homo sapiens sapiens, our species has been around for about 300,000 years. And we have never discovered a human society, a human culture that lacks music. It just doesn't exist. We haven't found it. There are three things that seem to be universal. Language. All societies we know have language. Second, spirituality. They all have some sort of spirituality. Not necessarily, formalized religion, but every human society has that. The third one is music. So these are some of the universal functions, if you like. All societies have lullabies. All societies, cultures use music in ceremonies, in celebrations, as pure entertainment, military and political functions it has. It has been referred to as a social glue, keeping us together. It is used in emotion regulation. When we get up in the morning, if we're not feeling very upbeat, we know what kind of music will make us feel upbeat. So it's a tool to regulate our emotions. Of course, it's used in therapy. There is this area known as music therapy. And obviously, it is a big part of cultural identity. People use music to establish identities, cultural identities. I'm going to single out two, if you like, two human capacities that allowed music, without which we wouldn't have music as we understand it today. And one of these, the first one, is called, I'm going to call it entrainment because that's the term used in research, is the capacity, the ability to move in synchrony with an external beat or rhythm. Now you might think this is such a simplistic thing. It's extremely rare in nature. As far as we know, we are almost, not quite, but almost the only species able to do this. Every single member of the human species instinctively is able to synchronize with, if I start playing a beat, we can do that. If I speed it up, if I slow it down, we can adjust to it. No other species is able to do that. Without this capacity, we would not have music. And scientists tell us that it's because of this capacity to move together in time that our species has managed to survive, because it builds social group cohesion, if you like. Essentially, music is about moving together in time. It brings us together in time. As we move together in time, we feel together in time. So this is a hugely important capacity. Without this, there is no music. The second one, again, you might be surprised. Octave, it's called octave equivalence. Our brains are innately hardwired to perceive two pitches that are in a mathematical relation of 1 to 2, for example, as being identical. And as far as we know, no other species is able to perceive this identity. Without this, all sounds would be chaotic for us. This allowed us to create music by providing a constrained space, sound space, within which we could work. Otherwise, again, it would be very difficult to make music. So these two capacities that belong to our species particularly are at the are responsible for musical culture. I mentioned language, spirituality, and music as universals. There is an important difference between language and music that I should mention before we move forward. As some of you might know, language is processed in a particular area in the brain. There is this so-called language area in the brain. Music does not have a single area. Different elements of music, like rhythm, melody, and other factors, they are processed all across the brain, in all different areas of the brain, which means when we engage with music, when we make music, we are using all of our brain. The whole neural network becomes active. In a sense, that makes us whole by activating everything that we have. That's why it's an incredibly fantastic, if you like, cultural tool, which has been indispensable throughout history, of course. So a little bit of background I thought would be useful for us as we move forward. How we listen to music. Sitting silently in semi-darkness as musicians make music is not universal. In the West, this has become a ritual only during the 19th century, but not all cultures do that. In fact, not all cultures make a distinction between performers and listeners. Everyone participates, everyone makes music, everyone sings. They don't have this conceptual separation, listeners, composers, and performers. So this is not a universal thing. And in fact, there is a author who came up with a new word. It has become quite popular. He said music is not an object, it's something we do, so we should use it as a verb. We should say we music. So musicking has become a popular word in scientific circles. I just want to show one quick example to get us talking about the main topic, influences between West and Turkish music. What we see when we are listening actually impacts what we hear quite significantly. The visual image that comes to us as we listen to the sounds, it will create different kinds of meanings. So if I were to play for you this music while you are looking at this image. Sorry, do we have sound? Let's go back to this. We should have sound. Şehrbanu Hanım. Thank you. Because this is on in my computer. Okay. Let's go back. Okay, so just to show you. Now, if I play the same thing, but with this image, it's quite a different experience. And in music psychology, many experiments have been carried out showing that really what listeners see has a huge impact. Maybe I could quickly tell you about one of them. In one experiment, they asked this marimba player, this percussion instrument, to play something, a melody. They recorded it, so it's exactly the same audio, and they mapped it onto two different visuals, two different videos, if you like. In one of them, the marimba player finishes the phrase with a slow gesture, raising the mallet slowly like that at the end. In the second one, a very sharp gesture. Everyone swore the audio was different. It was exactly the same sounds that they heard. So what we see really makes a difference in our listening experience. So what differentiates the music of one culture from that of another culture? The first one is the way they divide the octave. This is one of the most basic dimensions. Turkish music, we divide it into 53. The octave, when I say octave, am I clear to everyone? I mean, if you give me a sound, I might be able to sing back the octave to you. We can all do it. In the Turkish national anthem, there are some octave jumps that sometimes students find quite difficult, but like that kind of relationship. We hear this as the same pitch, same category of pitch. How we divide that space in between those two pitches is fundamental to what differentiates the music of one culture from another. Turkish music divides this space into 53, but in practice it's approximated into 24 notes in between. Western tonal music divides it into 12 equal parts. Chinese traditional music divides it only into 5 notes. So this is one of the basic differences between cultures, different musical cultures. Rhythms could be quite different. Melodic shapes could be quite different. But most significantly, instruments will be quite different. The instruments provide what musicians refer to as the color of the sound, tone color. Sometimes it's known as timbre. But you immediately, if it's an instrument you're familiar with, you just need to hear one sound and you know what it is. So I have, again, just very briefly, I have prepared a little clip for you just to see if you can tell where we travel on this map just by listening to the sound. So let's hear this. It's just 1 minute. Yes, we are in Indonesia. Over there. Didgeridoo, Australia. Yes. Of Argentina. There you go. Middle East, it's actually Egypt. Okay. Now this is from Egypt actually. Now there are two important ideas I'm going to draw from this example. One is that if we don't have at least a little bit of familiarity with the tonal language of a certain culture, it will still retain its musical otherness for us. It's not going to feel like our own music. This puts into question, of course, the frequently repeated assertion that music is a universal language. Musical capacity is universal. We are all musical. There is no such thing as, there is no one who is not musical. We are all musical. But if we're not exposed to a certain, culture's music, until we get familiar with it, it will retain its maybe sometimes strangeness. We won't quite know what's going on in it emotionally. So in that sense, we can, like our mother tongue, we speak of our native language, we can speak of our native music. Bless you. We can, and that's simply the musical language we've been exposed to since birth. It feels like our mother tongue in music, if you like. So the second point I want to make is, how do we know? How did you, it's very obvious, how did you know where these musics come from? You heard them before. But I suspect not everyone here has been to Indonesia or to Egypt. You heard them through recordings. Now, I cannot overemphasize the importance that recording technology made to musical culture. Before recordings, and we owe it to this man. Oh, sorry, let me stop this. Before recording technology, musical culture was profoundly different. You had to be in the physical presence of musicians making music. And if you loved a piece that you heard and you wanted to hear it again, you had to seek the next opportunity for a live performance. For us, we have access to all kinds of music at the push of a button. We wake up and the digital musical world is there for us. We can travel the world. This is important for now the discussion we're moving into, how the West came to discover Turkish music. No recording. Obviously, they had to be exposed to it through live events. So I would like to now move in that towards the second part of our talk. But please do ask if you have any questions, if anything I say doesn't make immediate sense to you. How does the West come to know about Turkish Ottoman music? This starts to happen particularly around late 17th century. Historians tell us that when the expansion of the Ottoman Empire towards the West slowed down, the West started to see the empire not so much as a military threat, but as a culture to be explored, studied, and enjoyed. And it is at that point that historically we find this phenomenon called Turkery. Sometimes it's also called turquoiserie as well. Anything Ottoman, anything Turkish became a source of fascination for the West. Clothing, rugs, literature, etc. And this is when the West became very interested in the music, Turkish music. At which point I have to mention that the intimate court music always, even until the 20th century, it remained quite secluded because it was performed at the court and in some Mevlevi dervish houses, but beyond that, it didn't find its way to Europe. What Europeans were exposed to is the Janissary music, mehter music. I assume many of you will know that Janissary is, well, they are regarded as the oldest military band in the world, and their function was to unnerve the enemy, to make them anxious, while giving morale to the Ottoman army. But they also performed at ceremonies. They weren't just performing during wartime, but they were seen to be so important that when the army went to war, the tents of the Janissaries were the first ones to be erected, and they were the last ones to be taken down. They really were at the forefront of military activities, if you like. So, Janissary music, the greatest influence on the West has been in terms of the instruments. And they helped develop the percussion section of the Western Symphony Orchestra. From about mid-18th century onwards, we start seeing within Western orchestras these Turkish instruments. And let's have a quick look at what these are. The kös is the large kettle drums here. Nakare, small drums. Zil, okay. And the crescent, or çevgan, sorry. We start hearing these sounds, the sounds that they make in Western music from the 18th century onwards. And I would like to now start playing some examples. But before we do that, let me show you a couple of graphs from historical documents showing orchestral seatings in Paris, in Italy, etc., in Rome. You will see that they have now standardly, routinely, a section for the Turkish band, these Turkish percussion instruments. Here we find it as well, over there. So these instruments now enter history books as well. So the first example we will listen to, these are going to be short excerpts for now, is by a composer known who's called Süssmayr. He's sadly more famous than through his own compositions. He's more famous for having completed Mozart's Requiem, which was left unfinished at his death. But Süssmayr is the one who completed Mozart's Requiem. But so when I play these examples, you might think, this doesn't quite sound Turkish. How is this Turkish? This is their impression of Turkishness through these instruments that they were exposed to. I mean, where would they have met these instruments and the music, Janissary music? Do you have an idea? When the Ottoman ambassadors visited, European cities and courts, they would have been accompanied by mehter, by Janissary band. When the Ottoman officials made entries to the courts, they would have been accompanied by Janissary music, and of course before wars there would have been. So these are essentially the only occasions when Westerners would have heard this music. But it seems to have made a significant impact, particularly through the instruments. So let's hear this example. We will hear the percussion instruments. We will also hear some interesting tuning in this first example, which does suggest some Oriental flavor. But it still is Western music. It's not quite yet exactly Turkish music. Can we turn the volume up a little bit? Unheard of before in Western symphony orchestras. Section from melodically, there is definitely an Oriental flavor there that is very new for Western ears. Okay. So this is what they understood from it. Remember, it's a representation of Turkishness as they understood it. Not necessarily, if you like, an authentic Turkish music. We're going to move to the famous examples, of course. Now, with the percussion instruments of Janissary bands becoming very popular and desirable, someone had the brilliant idea of developing a so-called Janissary pedal for keyboard instruments, for the early pianos. So there was this pedal, and when you pressed it, bells and all sorts of percussion instruments would sound. We're going to hear an example, the famous Mozart Alaturka, with the performed with the Janissary pedal actually. We're not going to hear the whole thing, but just enough so you hear the. The Janissary, keyboards with Janissary pedal. Mozart uses Turkishness, if you like, introduces Turkishness in another work, an opera called Abduction from the Seraglio, which takes place in Istanbul. This image I gave you is the engraving is an actual depiction from. Let me see try to find the date for you. Yes, it was a production of Abduction from the Seraglio, 1854, in the Drury Lane Theatre in Covent Garden. It's a drawing that was done on that night. Chorus of Janissaries. So we're going to hear a little bit of this music. Again, it's very Western, of course, in terms of how the tones are used. But this Turkishness that we've been discussing is introduced. All these bells and drums. Like this, I think we can stop it. So you get the idea what they understand from Turkishness. Coming to one of the pieces in the title of this talk, Beethoven's Choral Symphony. I actually gave you the date of the premiere. We are almost exactly 200 years from it, just by one day. It was the first performance took place 7th of May 1824. Oh, 201. Yes, that's what yes, by 1 year. In Vienna, it's called the Choral Symphony because it has introduced for the first time a chorus in the final movement, and it's also very, very long compared to contemporary symphonies, which were typically 15 to 20 minutes long. Beethoven's 90 is about 75 minutes, depending on the performance, of course. So it's a groundbreaking work. And the most famous aspect is the final movement, which includes this choir, words coming from Schiller, poetry by Schiller, Ode to Joy. Essentially, it's a call for unity, harmony, and love among all humankind. Now, I'm going to play a little bit of the beginning of the last movement, the famous theme, and then we will hear the Turkish. So what Beethoven does is to introduce a Turkish march. It does sound very beautiful. It does have a little Turkishness, if you like, in it. Some people, musicologists have been arguing about this. Why did he include a Turkish march? Well, if you think about it, if the words are about universal love, universal harmony among all human beings, it would be odd not to include the cultural other at that point within this unity. So what he knew as the cultural other was Ottomans, the Turks, if you like. So by embracing them within the piece as well, it really gives the message that, we should all be united through the words that they will be singing at that point when I play the Turkish march. Be embraced, all you millions, here's a kiss for all the world. So it's a call for universal love and unity. But let's hear the beginning. It's very famous. I'll just play the introduction and the famous tune, and then we'll hear the Turkish march. Okay, let's hear the Turkish march now. Let's see what he does with this music to turn it into something Turkish sounding. Okay, very good. I'd like to now play another example from Beethoven, which I suspect is not going to be very well known by at least some of you. He has written music for a play called The Ruins of Athens, incidental music just to accompany the play. In it, he composed into it a chorus of dervishes. And in this one, we will hear one aspect of Turkish music that we haven't heard so far. Traditional Turkish music is what we call monophonic, in the sense that if there's a melody, everyone will sing the same melody or play the same melody. Turkish music does not typically introduce, traditional Turkish music, it doesn't introduce multiple melodies happening at the same time. So it's not polyphonic in that sense. So he brings that element into the picture, but look at what he's doing. At that point, Turkishness and being Muslim and Ottoman, they are almost used synonymously. So quite extraordinarily, here we have one of the, at that point, greatest composers writing a praise for Muhammad, and within a Western piece. I've given you all three languages Turkish, the original German and the English. It's talking about the miracle of the splitting of the moon in Islamic literature. So here's what Beethoven does with it. Good. Let's move on to now to talk about Western music entering the Ottoman court. There is sometimes a misconception that Western music or Western art music arrived in Turkey in 1923 with the establishment of the Republic. That's not quite accurate. It actually enters Turkish land, if you like, with full force during the early 19th century with this movement called the Tanzimat, the restructuring of various institutions that took place, starting with Sultan Mahmud II, changes happening in music, in military reorganization is happening everywhere. It is at that point that the Ottomans, especially in Istanbul, they become increasingly interested in Western art and music. And Istanbul actually becomes a hub competing with musical centers in Europe, Rome, Paris, London, the likes of London. İstiklal Caddesi, which at that point is known as the, I think, Grand Rue de Paris, is beginning like mushrooms. Opera is particularly opera becomes something of great interest for the sultans as well. Naum Theatre is one of the most famous ones on İstiklal Avenue at that point. Here is a photo, and it had some quite well-known, like, you know, princes and emperors coming actually to attend performances there. We know that from mid-19th century onwards, Istanbul audiences in one night, they could, if they wanted to, choose from 3 different performances of Verdi's Aida. 3 performances happening across the city. I mean, this is quite unheard of for that point. So it's a really thriving cultural life, very interested in Western things at that point. Just like the Turkey that we saw, the West was so obsessed with anything Turkish. Now the reverse is beginning to happen. What's happening in the court is that the sultans are beginning to actually invite Western musicians to teach them Western tonal language, if you like. They are having their children take piano lessons, and they are beginning to compose, actually, using the Western tonal system. And I would like to play one of the first sultans who became known as a composer as well, is Abdulaziz. I will play one piece by him. His pieces were printed by an Italian music publishing house They were being, they were on sale in Europe, so it's quite extraordinary, really. I will play one piece. We already heard this when I showed you this example about how what we see affects what we hear. When he visited in 1867, the Sultan visited London. He was hosted at the Marlborough House, which still is in existence, of course, and this piece we're about to hear was performed in his honor. So this is called La Gondole Barcarolle by Sultan Abdulaziz. If you didn't know it was by him, I don't think you would guess that this was composed by an Ottoman Sultan. But here we are. It's very beautiful. Another example by another Sultan, Sultan Murad V, was extremely prolific as a composer. Literally more than 1,000 pieces he has composed. And this is a piano piece I will play for you, Dance of the Castagnettes, recorded from YouTube, so the quality is not that great, but it will give you an idea about his composition. Remember, this is not replacing Ottoman court music at all. The wonderful, intricate, intimate court music still is happening. Compositions are being. We will hear something from Ismail Dede Efendi later on, before we finish. But this is almost like exploring something exotic for the Ottomans. It's very attractive. It's something new and different. So. At that point, we have also Western musicians coming to work as music teachers, music, if you like, organizers for the court. The most famous one is Donizetti Pasha, who becomes a pasha. But I would like to play you something from the musician who came after him, after Donizetti Pasha, Guatelli Pasha, this one is. And he composed, one of the pieces he composed, well known, is the Osmaniye March, which for a while was used as the imperial march. So we're going to hear this. I've given you the rhythm. The usuls are rhythms in Turkish music. He's bringing Turkishness within a West. We're going to hear really a combination and integration of the two styles here. You will very clearly hear the dum tek tek tek, dum tek dum tek. Do you know how these were beaten, how these rhythms were beaten? Dum is the heavy beat, so it goes on the right knee. You would be sitting. I could invite all of you to beat time. You remember I said music is about movement, it brings us together, we could all beat the time. So it would be dum tek tek tek, dum tek dum tek. Tek is the lighter beats, so it's so clearly audible. You will hear this. Sorry, let's go back to it. This is the Osmaniye March. Very good. This is, to my ears, at least a lot more Turkish sounding than, say, the Mozart. So, Western instruments, Turkish melody, Turkish rhythm, a real integration is beginning to happen now. And at this point, I will move to the Republic, in the interest of time. 1923, the Republic is established, and there is this flurry of activity trying to find a musical language that will represent the new state, if you like. And they find it in the combination of folk music, Turkish folk music, with Western tonal language, if you like. This is not a new idea. The so-called nationalism in music was already happening across Europe. I mean, Edvard Grieg in Norway, Mussorgsky in Russia, Dvorak, Czech composer. These were already working with local folk music melodies, integrating them into a Western style. So it's not an entirely new invention that the Turkish state brought. What's happening is that young musicians are now sent to learn, become expert in this new Western language, if you like, composing in this style. We have this famous Turkish 5 composers, 5 young men sent to Paris, Vienna to study, and all of them return and they start educating other students, other musicians. Conservatoires are established, orchestras are established. While the idea is national, its implementation was actually very much an international effort, because we had many foreign musicians coming to help establish these new institutions. And remember, this is also around the Second World War. We became a safe haven for many Europeans escaping the Nazi regime. So we welcomed them, and they became part of establishing these new institutions. Scientists, on the one hand, for example, working at universities. In music, for example, Ankara Conservatoire, we have famous musicians like Bela Bartok coming, Paul Hindemith coming and helping. Great efforts are made to collect folk songs from all corners of the country. With recording machines in their hands, musicologists, ethnomusicologists are touring around the country collecting folk songs. So I would like to now play some examples of how Turkish folk pieces came together with Western tonal language and what happens. Musicologists tell us that the very first example of a Turkish folk song arranged in a Western style was by Cemal Reşit Rey, one of the Turkish 5. And I'll play a little bit of this. Zeybek is a dance from the Aegean region of Turkey. Zeybeks were a kind of a militia in the 19th century. They were armed groups who, if necessary, would fight as well. And the Zeybek dance actually originated as 2 men with arms dancing, improvising a dance. And the head of the Zeybeks was known as Efe. So you will hear the Zeybek quality. The rhythm is definitely there, the Zeybek rhythm. From Ulvi Cemal Erkin. This is a piece from a collection of small piano miniatures. It's called Zeybek, and it sounds like this. For those of you who know the Zeybek dance, you can really visualize it doing the Zeybek, because the rhythm is there and the melody is there. The idea behind all this was to, remember we talked about familiarity. how familiarity with an idiom, tonal idiom, is quite necessary before you can respond to it emotionally, the music that you hear. The idea was that, well, Turkish folk music, it has a different tonal idiom. If we embed it within a language that the West already knows, it will be a lot easier for them to access it. That was the idea, to bring our music to them in an accessible form, if you like. And then if they are interested in the original, they could always come and listen to it. So that was the driving force. Ulvi Cemal Erkin has a very famous piece. I'm going to play this Köçekçe. It's a very lively dance going all the way back to the 19th century, Ottoman court. Here is what he did. Okay, this gives you the idea. My next example comes from another of the Turkish Five, Ahmet Adnan Saygun. Köroğlu he composed this opera called Köroğlu. Köroğlu is a 16th century folk hero, if you like, who is always on the side of the oppressed, always fights against injustices. Scholars think he was actually also a real person who lived and composed poetry. So he's a very well-known folk figure. Let me play the original folk song a little bit, and then we'll hear what Saygun does with it. This is the... Here is what Saygun does with it in the opera. It's a bass singing it. Very good. My next example, we continue with the meeting of Turkish folk music with Western style composition. Horon is a dance and music from the Black Sea region. Sorry, I meant, yes. You can hear the rhythm, the actual Horon rhythm here, like that. Remember, from the 19th century onwards, the piano is a very desired instrument for middle to upper class families. It's almost like a requirement in Europe for people to, you know, if you're like a bourgeois family, you have to have a piano. Composing piano miniatures like this really makes Turkish music enter European houses, if you like. They're published, and some of them are more difficult to play, but some of them can be sight-read. So it introduces something really Turkish to the ears of European public. We come now to the second piece in my title. Cemal Reşit Reyit composed these variations, so-called variations on an old Istanbul song. I found this translation on the internet. I don't know if it's a great one, but it will, for those of you who might not know the original, it will do. Here is the original. Let's hear a little bit the original. Very famous. I'm going to play, this is a piece for orchestra and piano. It's almost like a piano concerto. I will play from the beginning and we'll hear the ending as well. Essentially, Ray is showing us what he could do with this beautiful tune in terms of orchestration, instrumentation. It's a variation, so he's constantly changing the instrumentation, bringing the different instrumental sections of the orchestra into play. So let's hear a little bit of the beginning. Like this, going through various instrumentations. I will play the ending. There's a little surprise there, which is very beautiful in my view. Like this momentary light, saluting one master, saluting another great master from history. We almost come full circle. Mozart heard the Ottomans, the Turks, wrote this music. Cemal Reşit heard Mozart, and he incorporates it, he quotes it. And it's been interpreted as a sign of just great respect. And he doesn't prolong it, it's just this momentary, sudden reference to Mozart. It's so beautiful. If it were very elaborate and long, you might think he's really pushing it to our face. He doesn't do that. It's just it's like a vision. It comes and just disappears. It's very beautiful. All right. Now, Kâtibim continues to be very popular. It has been transcribed into various genres, jazz, popular, etc. But we have a version, a recent version, 2007, that I want to play for you, and we're going to see the video actually. Living Turkish composer Fazıl Say composed a violin concerto, 1001 Nights in the Harem, and there's a section for a couple of minutes where he quotes Kâtibim, and I'd like to play that for you. It's very impressive and very powerful the way he has orchestrated it, I think. Fantastic soloist. Let me play the beginning a little bit and then we'll move to, this is the beginning of the whole piece. Now to the section where we're going to hear Kâtibim. So it starts like this. Let's, sorry, can I find it? It's not there. We're getting there. Okay. There is a bit of a noise there. There's a bit of noise. A wonderful violinist in my view. Turn the volume on just a little bit. And then the whole orchestra. And then it moves on to a different section. We're coming to the end. I have only two more examples. I would like to play the last one. I will play all 4 minutes of it for you. This one, we go back to the 19th century. Dede Efendi, İsmail Dede Efendi, one of the best known court musicians. He was a dervish as well, I believe. The story is famous. The French ambassador is visiting the court and they bring with them their musical ensemble. And what do they play? They play waltzes for the Sultan. And the Sultan is thinking, oh, we have to return this. We have to show them that we can, you know, play, we can compose waltzes as well. He asks Dede Efendi, says, can you do this in one night? And apparently the story goes, Dede Efendi says yes, and the next morning is born Gül Nihal, the very famous Turkish song that all Turks will know, I would think. The version we're going to hear, I find this very moving. It's young musicians from the Bursa Zeki Müren Fine Arts Lise coming together as part of the European Youth Orchestra with young musicians from all over Europe, and they are playing Gül Nihal. So again, a combination of West with Turkish music. Hopefully the microphone will not make that noise. I'll skip a little bit. Very young musicians, Lise age, secondary school age musicians, most of them. stop this here. Okay. And I will move to our very last example. But before I play that, in our becoming increasingly divided world, which is really a cause of concern for all of us at the moment currently, we should not underestimate the power of music. As I said, it moves us beyond language. It allows us to be together even in disagreement. It allows us to disagree in harmony, because we might all be listening to the same thing but having very different experiences. That's okay, it still makes us feel together. And the last example, one thing I wanted to say. Someone said, a musicologist and a musician said, if you put two people together to create in front of a music stand, they make two sounds together. They make the effort to create something beautiful together. After that moment, they will not be able to look each other in the eye as enemies. Making music together is a fantastic way to unite us. So I'm going to end fittingly by something from Yunus Emre, Şol Cennetin Irmakları. Again, I tried to put I'll give you a translation. Yunus Emre, the name of this institute, a very famous poet from the 13th century and a mystic, a Sufi. This piece is very well known. We're going to hear a symphonic version of it, because today's talk has been about mutual influences that brings Yunus Emre, this mystic poet, together in a Western arrangement, if you like. Hopefully the sound will not be too bad. So this is our last piece, and the words in translation is there. I think this works very beautifully in this symphonic arrangement. It's the Çukurova Symphony Orchestra from the south of Turkey performing this. Sorry, the sound is not great, but still it will give us an idea. It's this one. here today. Thank you so much for coming and listening. In case you're interested, I put a list of everything that we listened to today. Any questions? Any comments? Thank you. I hope this was both interesting, informative, and also enjoyable for you. As I said, it's a huge area. There is so much more to discover, you know, so many more pieces of music. So this was just an overview, just scratching the surface a little bit as a beginning. Anything you might want to ask? Yes.
Byzantine music, how does it relate to today's Turkish sanat music? I'm talking about like madrigals and all that.
Yes.
Orthodox church music.
I actually am not an expert in that area, so I'm not able to tell. But I know scholars make a connection. If you know more, you tell me.
No, I don't.
Sorry. But I don't doubt that there's a connection.
What is the
How did Byzantine music, before the capture of Istanbul, before it becomes an Ottoman city, how does that music influence what we today know as Turkish art music? Ottoman court music, essentially.
Good question. If I may say something,
Yes,
I'm not an
please.
expert in it, but I did some Turkish music when I lived in Turkey decades ago. I believe there are some keys, which we call makams in Turkish music, have some commonalities, but only a
Yes,
few.
the modes.
Not all of them. I
Yes,
think.
the modes.
But there are
Yes.
some modes, I think they are
Yes,
called.
they are called
you
modes,
know,
yes.
Some modes are common.
Yes.
That's all really as far as I can tell myself.
And in its early stages, Byzantine chant is monophonic, isn't it? So there is possibly that connection as well. But as I said, I'm not a historian of that era, so it's an interesting question, though.
Yes, I find the Jamal Rashid Rai Kâtibim, what they call it.
Kâtibim. Oh, sorry, there's a typo there. Kâtibim.
Very familiar tone from all Middle East. It's not, and even in
The melody.
yes. So it's very familiar
Yes.
in Middle East.
We
was adapted.
we don't know. Yes.
Adapted of the
adapted.
original in
No,
Arabic.
the original is Turkish.
Everyone claims it's yes.
I heard Greek version.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone.
By the way.
It's anonymous. We don't know exactly who composed it, when it originated, at least as early 19th century, but we don't know. We don't know.
Yes.
But it is known, at least for the Turks, as an old Istanbul song.
Okay.
Everyone will know it as
Because
such.
we have very old Arabic song like
Yes.
the same tone.
Yes.
So I
Yes.
wonder where is the origin of this melody? I don't
No
know.
one knows. I'm not sure anyone knows.
Google, you will find Greek.
Not
Yes.
everything Greek, come on.
It may be that it was featured in a movie.
Degree.
I mean, some things through cultural exchanges, they belong to all of them, possibly. You know, I think they can all claim ownership. I wouldn't have a problem with that. We love it as it is, but if Greeks think they originated it and they love it as such, well, okay, we can live with that, I suppose. It's just a beautiful song. It's music. Yes, yes.
By the way, that must be Greeks lived in Istanbul.
Yes, we exactly the rooms. Yes, yes, yes. Thank you. Very good. Thank you all so much. I think we have some.
We have Turkish
lovely,
refreshments.
Yes, lovely food as well and refreshments.
Oh, thank you so much
You're very
all for
welcome.
joining
Thank
and
you.
thank you.